Organ donation can be both life-saving and life-giving. Recipient of a double transplant, Elaine has ticked off most of her bucket list thanks to a life-changing double transplant. This is How We Cope. I'm Hugo Ribatica. Good health is one of those things that we often take for granted, but not Elaine. She's the recipient of a double transplant. Elaine, thank you so much for coming on to Cope.
Thank you for having me here.
Tell us about your story.
My story. My story is not defined by my health. I think I'd like to say that first. My story is I'm part of a lovely family. I have a great life. I have great friends. I have a wonderful daughter who's met a most amazing man. They've given me grandchildren. So my life is really, really,
How many
really
grandchildren?
Good. I have Chloe, who's just turned 8, and the new baby Kira, who's 6 months.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
COVID baby.
A COVID baby, yes. A COVID baby. Yeah.
So many years ago, before you had that transplant, what was the process that led to the realization is that this is what you would need?
I was diabetic onset, so I got it when I was 16 from a tooth abscess that kind of made sort of funny things in my brain. And I came out of a coma and I was diabetic. So I was insulin dependent for many years.
How did that impact your life as a teenager?
It was difficult. You know, I think living with diabetes is things you don't realise. You know, you're sort of driving on the highway and your sugar's low and you eat whatever glucose you've got in the car and you're stuck in traffic, you can't get more. And there's that feeling of panic. So living with diabetes is not always easy. Remember, I'm talking many years ago, and now it's a lot easier. But I think at the time, I was 16. We just emigrated from England. I've been in South Africa for a year. So I hadn't even found myself in a new country, and suddenly I had the health issue. So it was difficult.
Do you remember the sort of questions that went through your mind when you discovered?
Not really. You know, I can remember coming out the coma, and my dad was there, and he was a very strong man, but he had tears in his eyes. And I couldn't understand why, you know, I just couldn't understand. And the more I tried to talk to him, the more he sort of cried because I wasn't making sense. And I only found out later that actually told him there was a good chance I'd be brain damaged. Oh, wow. So of course he was looking at this and I'm saying, but I'm fine, but screaming out like, you know, so, but as I said,
you thought you were fine?
I thought I was fine. To me, I was great, you know, couldn't say I was in hospital. But it was a long road. But as I said earlier, I don't define myself by my health. Never stopped me doing anything I wanted. I kept, my Coke and my sugar testing kits and my insulin were in my handbag all the time. I had very heavy handbags. That's one thing I did have. People used to pick my handbag and say, "What have you got in here?" You know. Yeah. But it was fine. You know, it's looking back. You know, but looking back, it was easy. You know, I think that's one thing I should also try and remember is. It's like everything. In history, it wasn't so bad. When it happens, it is bad, you know. So I was scared to do sports. At one time, I was scared to even go shopping on my own, just in case my sugar dropped and I ended up in a coma and then someone would steal my handbag.
So how did you keep busy? Did you have any activities that you...
I was still at school. So I finished my matric and then I got a bursary and I went to work. So it didn't really impact my life negatively. More my social life. So yeah, and that was my life with diabetes.
So let's build up to you then discovering that you're going to need to have a transplant.
That came a lot later, and it is apparently quite common with diabetes. One of the side effects is unfortunately kidney failure, and I developed that must be 15 years ago. I developed end-stage kidney failure, and I was on dialysis.
What stage, sorry?
End stage.
End stage.
Yeah. And I was on dialysis 3 times a week, 4 hours at a time. And I was on the transplant list. And eventually I got my transplant.
So that conversation when you discovered that you had end-stage kidney failure, you went to see your doctor, he put a call through to you. What emotions did you go through?
What actually happened was I was seeing another doctor for diabetes. A marvellous man, absolutely marvellous man. And he came one day and he said that I can't treat you anymore, you need to see a nephrologist because you do have end-stage kidney failure. And he referred me to another doctor. Absolutely amazing. I still see him today, all these years later. and he was the one that organised a transplant.
Was there a lot of fear in you when you heard that you needed a transplant?
Not really, you know, I think it's more shock when I first heard, you know, and I think for me the saddest thing for me was, it wasn't really the fear. For me it was the emotion of seeing other people who you have dialysis with. You know, you're with these people 3 hours for 4 hours 3 times a week, and you become friends. You chat and you laugh and you joke, and you're really good friends because you're stuck with each other. You've all got a similar problem, so you have something huge thing in common. You're all waiting for that gift, that transplant, and then of course, you know, the names get rubbed off the roster, and you mourn together, and you know, miss the person that used to sit next to you on the dialysis chair. So I think rather than fear, I don't think I was ever really scared. Maybe I'm fooling myself, but for me it was, yeah, it was that. It was a sad place because you knew that you wouldn't see all those people all the time.
So that's the other people, but what about you? And the reason I ask is, there's always the possibility that you may not get a donor, correct?
Yeah.
Did that occur to you, or were you sufficiently positive not to have that sit on your...
No, I had plans for short-term life. You know, I think that was my thing at the time. It was just, I still believe live despite your disease. So even though I was on dialysis, I was still working. Still had a full-time job.
So short-term life, does it stem from the diabetes at 16?
Yeah, I've had health issues.
Yeah.
Because of that, I kind of thought that no, it would be short-term. I wouldn't sort of live to a grand old lady with 6,000
So this for you
cats.
is a miracle, having grandkids and living to see them?
Well, it is. You know, my whole life is a miracle, actually. You know, the fact that, and coming back to when I was on dialysis, to me the biggest thing was, and it may sound really strange and really weird, but the biggest thing is that, did I deserve this? You know, what made me deserve it more than all the other people? There's 4,000 people that want transplants. And what gives me the
Is that a literal number?
It might be a bit more. It was about 3,500, 4,000. It's currently in South Africa.
So when you came onto that list, you were potentially number 3,500?
Yeah, it depends on also blood type and matching and that sort of thing. So you can jump to the top of the list, or you can stay at the bottom. It depends very much when you get to the top. I'm not even sure how it works, but you get to a certain area, certain level, and then, I mean, they phoned me. I had 3 calls. I had to go to the hospital. So what they do the blood check, they do DNA, they do blood matching, and the very last one is an antibody typing, I think. And the one day, I mean, I'd gone through the 3rd time, so my daughter said, can I come? No, stay. I'll be home just now. You know how it goes. And of course, I didn't come home for 3 months because I went to the hospital and I was a match, 100% match. With some regret at the time, because the other person that was there was one of our good friends from dialysis. And he was also hoping, he didn't get it. But I found out he had one sort of later, so. And that it happened, you know. But they phoned me at about 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And they said, okay, we've got a potential match for you, come through to the hospital. So I did, and then they said, okay, we'll phone you. Oh, I'm not going to phone. So the phone rang at 2 o'clock in the morning. I assumed it was the alarm and switched it off because I wasn't expecting the phone call. And then they phoned again. I'm like, oh, did it again.
You're getting your alarm.
Yeah, thinking, not realising it's 2:30 in the morning, my alarm's not going to go off. Then eventually it went off the 3rd time. I was like, oh, what? No, phone, it was actually the transplant. She says, why didn't you answer your phone? No, long story, just don't ask. And I went through, and I think within an hour I was in theatre.
Wow.
Yeah, with a new kidney and pancreas, and from that my life changed. It really did.
How so?
Well, I could travel. You know, you're sort of shackled to a dialysis machine, where you can't go far because every 2 days you've got to go for dialysis. Obviously from England, I couldn't travel. I couldn't go home, couldn't see my friends, because I was always shackled to this machine, even going to Cape Town. For me, the logistics involved in getting a machine in Cape Town and getting into a session in Cape Town, I never travelled. So my life was sort of honed around the Flora Clinic, which is where I had my treatment. So that was kind of bad, but as I said, I still worked.
But was it emotional for you when you obviously got that phone call, or was it emotional when you came out of hospital?
It was very emotional. You know, I think when it finally sank in, it happened very quickly. You know, I mean, remember, I went to the hospital thinking I was going to go home. You know, it wasn't going to happen to me because it just wasn't my turn. In my mind, it wasn't going to happen.
And you got locked down in the hospital, didn't you?
And yeah, and I got locked down. and when it did, I mean, I didn't have time to panic before because they put me into the ward, and then someone said, no, don't book it in, we haven't got time for that. So it was kind of it felt like 2 minutes. I was in the theatre gown, in the theatre, and it was just too quick to even think what was happening. But afterwards, when you think about it, you realise that it has had a profound impact. You know, to me, it's, you know, it may sound corny, but you sort of, you breathe a lot lighter. You know, you step gently. You know, you love a lot harder because you know you've been given this gift, and this gift changes your life. And it did. You know, for me, it really, really changed my life. I mentioned earlier my grandchildren. I mean, they're the light of my whole life. I mean, they were born after my transplant. You know, who knows, I've even seen them. Maybe it would always just be a picture on a wall and someone saying, oh, that was your nan. You know, here we've got this wonderful relationship, and yeah, we really get on well, and you know, I'm the kind of the crazy nan, but often think, you know, not for the gift, but I even know them.
And the people around you, family, friends, do they appreciate the gift and the fact that you've literally been given a new lease on life?
I think most definitely. I think everyone around me, it was kind of this miracle also that happened, you know. I sort of went from the sick one to suddenly the one that sort of does things, you know. And I've got
traveller.
I travel, I've got energy. I sort of took up Toastmasters. I do all these funny things since because I've got this new lease of life and I'm not going to waste it.
So where have you been since you got the transplant?
Oh my gosh, I've been everywhere. I've done Greece, Egypt, Amsterdam 3 times. England, I eventually went home to England, Germany frequently, because my partner's German, so we go home, he went home. So yeah, and but even like going to Cape Town, going to Durban, you know, getting your car and driving for the day somewhere. You know, over December, we drove, myself and the kids, we went on holiday, and we drove, I think, 3,000 kilometres. I could never have possibly done that before the transplant.
And one of the things that we did talk about previously is your philosophy around organ donation. And I know you feel quite passionately and quite strongly, rightfully so. But we're not going to talk about that right now. We're going to talk about it when we come back. Do stay with us. We are speaking to Elaine, a 2-time organ recipient. Stay with us. Thank you for staying with us. Tinashe, our resident counsellor, has just joined us. Tinashe, good to have you on the show.
Good.
You've obviously been eavesdropping and picked up on that conversation around one of the conditions that Elaine had, which is diabetes. You're all too familiar with that.
No, for sure. I've struggled with it, but I guess I'm a lucky one. I had type 2 and I kind of recovered after many other interventions. But I guess I'm quite familiar with that space of just trying to push past one condition just so another one taps in, and then it's just quite murky. Then you just end up just surviving.
Yeah.
So I get that.
Yeah. Elaine, we spoke about your passion around organ donation and what it means to you. Tell us a little bit about that, please.
I think what is important to remember is that the best day of my life was the worst day for someone else. And that would be the person who actually donated the transplants. And if people don't want to do it, I understand. Yeah, I understand 100%. But the problem is that when these people ask if their loved one hasn't got a chance of survival, at that stage it's too late to say, can we harvest organs? Because you're in a stage you can't even make your mind up. And for me, I feel very strongly my life has changed. I know my grandchildren. I've got this wonderful life because of my transplants. And for me, it's, if you're considering donating an organ, in fact, they can take 11 organs. They can harvest 11 different organs.
Wow.
Things like corneas. And just imagine helping a child see for the first time. You know, helping someone take a first deep breath. Or helping someone to truly mend a broken heart. And if that sort of thing speaks to you, then please register. As I said earlier, there's about 4,000 people that are desperately waiting for those organ transplants. And you can also change your life. You know, and I think that to me is really, really important. And as I say, don't leave it until you've got to make that decision under such duress. And trust me, I do sympathise with the people that are families, friends and loved ones of the people who are donating the organs. But to me, you can actually save somebody else, another child, another
Such
person.
an important decision. I agree.
It
I
is.
am actually an organ donor.
No, thank you for that.
Even though I always think, with all my chronic illnesses, do I still have anything viable? I'm like, I'll figure it out. but at the end of the day, it's like the idea of how medicine helps us in such crazy moments. So when people tell you that something inside of you can help someone else no longer be on medication like I've been, or I'm just like, man, just take a toe. I don't know, take whatever you feel is important. But of course, I had to sit down with my mother, because you have to write down who's vouching for you to legally do this, and she kind of really just ignored it, like, ugh, what? Now you're a donor. I've got stickers everywhere, my driver's license everywhere. In case I'm in an accident, everybody should know this person is a donor. Do what you will, take what you need. And for the family, they're just like, ugh, your body has done so much terror to you. But it's quite weird that you still want to be giving of it anyway. And I'm like, it's a life. Trust me, we know the value of, like you said, just literally mending someone's broken heart. Like, it's absolute help. And I think we all have been blessed with technology and science to be able to get to a point where you can give someone sight.
For me, until this conversation with Elaine, I was totally against it. Didn't believe in it, primarily because I never really thought about it. But the way you've put it across and the explanation that you've given will probably cause me to give it some thought.
Well, I'm glad I met both of
It
you.
goes against like tradition, though, you know. Because I mean, it's the idea of, I mean, if I were to talk to my grandmother about this, we'd have big problems, because your flesh,
It's taboo.
according to church, you know, you go into the earth, and you know, even talking about being cremated, things like that are very difficult conversations. Where I don't know, people seem to think maybe you get resurrected one day, and your body, you know, don't give away of yourself. So I think the more normal these conversations can happen, and that can only happen with more, you know, stories being told like Lane is doing, where you actually show that you're just putting it in the earth for it to be eaten away when you could save a life.
So presumably, when you're a donor, this is based on anonymity.
No, not.
I don't know my
Oh
donor.
no, it
I
should
don't.
be actually. Well,
It
for the
is,
recipient, I think it's up to the family of the person
Yes.
who's given.
Yeah, I don't know who my donor was. I don't know if it was a man or woman.
I wonder if that's
Would
a
you like
legal
to know?
thing.
I just like them to know, whoever they are, that I am eternally grateful. You know, I understand. Remember, I said earlier, I understand it was the worst day of their life, and if they don't want to be reminded of that day, I get it. You know, but I just want them to know that my life has changed because of what that person did, and I am eternally grateful for that.
But it can be very traumatic for a family to know where their loved one's organs went to,
Yeah.
because you get so fixated by this idea that they are still out there.
Yeah.
So you find that, I know in America they've had cases of people stalking a person who had their loved one's organs, fishing for spiritual connection, soul connection, like they're a part of you. So I think, I'm not sure how legal it is. I think it may be a law thing actually, of almost like surrogacy with stuff like that. You know, like how do you communicate with the family? Do they know? Is it anonymous? But I think being anonymous is the best, because it's really hard enough dealing with the loss. Now you have to wrap your mind around transplant. Like we say it so casually, but it's actually quite unreal that you can put something out of someone else and it still functions in that person. What does that mean for the soul, the spirit, and all of that?
Well, some of the emotions that you've expressed, Elaine, are obviously bittersweet, you know, joyous day for you, terribly difficult for the family of the donor.
Yeah.
Presumably your focus has been on the joy and not so much the depression or the misery that the other family is going through at that time. Has it really been about you conjuring up mind over matter type energy?
No, I don't think. Yeah, for me, the joy just outweighs. How can I be depressed when someone's done this? You know, to me, it's
Willingly?
willingly. Yeah, they gave me the chance, and I think my part is to make sure it doesn't go wasted. You know, so live my life to the full. It's been 11 years. I've had 11 years of time I possibly wouldn't have had. And if I think what's happened in those past 11 years of what I would have missed, as I mentioned, my grandchildren, all the friends I've met in the past 11 years, the travelling I've done, the adventures I've had. It's been 11 years of magic, you know, and to me, no, I can't get depressed because I was given something that I will always, always, always be eternally grateful for. So no, I'm not depressed. Sometimes I feel, at the beginning I felt guilty, you know, because someone had to pay the ultimate price.
Yes.
But honestly, my joy outweighs most of the things because I know I have such a good life. I have this wonderful life. And it's all thanks because of someone actually made the ultimate sacrifice and said, here we go, here's time for you. And that's what it was a gift of time.
You mentioned that you created some friendships with other people that were on the donor list and also people that you met when you were going to the doctors. Are you still friends? Have those relationships gone beyond your receipt?
Not really, unfortunately.
Okay.
I know, look, I have been in touch with them and I know that my 3 closest friends all have had transplants.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. In fact, the chap that was with me on the day I had mine, he got his, it was maybe within a month, he had his transplant.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, it's a phase of your life, you know, and I find that really sad that you're so close with someone and then life just happens, and you lose contact. But maybe like me, they're so enwrapped in the joy of what they've got that, you know, we don't
Moving
hover.
forward.
Yeah, keep moving forward.
Moving forward.
That was a bad place in our lives. That let's just carry on with it.
Friends for a season, I suppose.
Exactly, and I'm a firm believer in that. You know, I mean, I left.
It's almost like making friends. I always laugh when I make friends with nurses in the hospital.
Yeah.
And it's like you feel guilt, you miss them,
Yeah.
but you're also happy when they see you and they're like, I haven't seen you in months. I'm like, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Because I don't want this to continue.
Yeah,
It's supposed
yeah.
to be a stable relationship. But at the same time, it's like we shared a moment and
Yeah.
we have a common story. But it's okay to love and leave you because you were for that moment. I
Yeah.
don't want to keep seeing you
Yeah.
in that light also. It almost gives you
Yeah.
permission to really just commit to moving forward.
Yeah.
Yeah. Incidentally, I think almost a fortnight ago, I met a nurse that nursed my little girl in ICU nine years ago. Because when she was born, she had the umbilical cord wrapped around her neck, and I think suffered from a little bit of asphyxia. I don't know what it's called, what the technical term is. But for about 10 days, she was in the ICU, and Yvonne, this lady who was incidentally my senior in junior school, would come in and she would massage Kitten, you know. And I saw her, and I said to her, you know, this is remarkable, great to see you after so long. Told my little girl about it, and she sent her a little voice note to say, thank you.
Oh, sweet.
Adorable.
Yeah.
And that's good. See, it's good to bump into them after a long
Yeah.
time. It really gives you a nice flashback to look how far
Yeah.
you've come.
Yeah.
But in that moment when you were sharing it with that person, it felt like you're never gonna see that flash forward. So now it's like, isn't this incredible?
Mm.
But I still make a habit of sending flowers to the hospital wards that I've been to, like for Christmas and stuff like that, because
You're a very nice person.
you know they take care of us. you
Yeah,
know,
no, they
like,
do.
The patients in the ward. I have so many WhatsApp groups. It's silly.
Yeah.
But it's
Now let's talk about
fine.
your bucket list. Obviously, there are a number of things that you've done. Travel, key amongst those. Anything else that you would like to do that you haven't done?
No, I think, yeah, for me, my bucket list was never an issue. You know, I'm not a forward planner. You know, if you spoke to my bank manager, he'd laugh, he'd agree. You know, I don't think past the end of the month. Yeah, my financial planner keeps saying more, but I don't, you know. I live for today. And I think that's because I never expected to get this extra time. So I've got a philosophy, if I want to do something, I'll do it. You know. Okay, there's always the big stuff. You know, I want to see the Taj Mahal. But if I don't see it, it doesn't affect my life. No, there's a lot of things I'd like to do, but they're not really my bucket list. I'm content with what I have right now. I don't need a bucket list.
One of the things I found most amazing about you is that your energy, your attitude right now, and obviously the way you describe it, even when the odds were stacked up against you. What are those words of encouragement or wisdom that you want to give to somebody who's on that list right now, who's hoping somebody will donate or that they will move up the list?
I think what I would really like to say is that don't live your life by your illness, and don't give up. Carry on your life as though it's going to happen. Because the minute you give up, then other health complications come in and your chance just lessens. So try and find a life outside of, and I know I was lucky because I could actually carry on working, but find something outside of your illness. Because I believe, look, I've had a lot of illnesses, a lot of issues health-wise. But for me, if you've got a health issue, find something outside of that to focus on. Because that's all you've got to focus, then you're never going to see past that. And then one day when you're past that, and everything is just like this big open thing in front of you, then you can relax. But at the moment, you've got to just get to that point where you're ready for it. When your transplant comes for you, make sure you're ready for it. You're healthy, you've got a life, you want to live. That's what I'd like to say, is don't give up. It will happen. Just don't give up.
Elaine, you've been absolutely amazing. Thanks for coming onto the show.
Thank you so much.
Tina, as always.
Thank you very much. It was great meeting you both.
Thank you, guys.
It was really, really great. And as Elaine says, don't give up. It will happen. Show us cope. And remember, together we can. Goodbye.